My daughter was on her knees with 3 police officers pointing their guns at her, all because she was playing basketball in the wrong neighborhood. They didn't know who I was, yet. Rain pounded the cracked asphalt of Preston Heights Community Park as 14-year-old Jasmine Taylor practiced her free throws. The old basketball hoop's chain net clinked with each perfect shot, a sound that had become her daily meditation after advanced placement classes. The patrol car's lights flashed against the wet pavement before its siren even screamed. 2 more cruisers skidded into the park entrance seconds later, their tires spraying arcs of muddy water. Jasmine froze mid-shot, her heart leaping into her throat as 6 officers emerged with weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them!" Officer Miller barked, his pistol already aimed. His rain-soaked badge caught the flash of red and blue lights. "Down on the ground now!" Jasmine's basketball slipped from her trembling fingers, bouncing once before rolling away into a puddle. "I'm just playing basketball." "Down on the ground!" She dropped to her knees, rain soaking through her jeans. Her heart hammered against her ribs as officers surrounded her, weapons trained on a teenage girl whose only crime was being black in an affluent neighborhood. The same neighborhood where her mother's mansion stood overlooking the park, where they'd lived for the past 3 years. "We got a call about a suspicious person casing houses," Officer Reed announced, his boots splashing through puddles as he circled her. His hand rested heavily on his holster, as if a 14-year-old girl in basketball shorts posed a deadly threat. "This is a private community. My mom lives right there." Jasmine's voice shook as she pointed toward the white colonial mansion on the hill. Water ran down her face. Maybe tears, maybe rain. She couldn't tell anymore. "I live here. Please, just let me call her." "Sure you do, sweetheart," Officer Parker sneered, yanking her arms behind her back. The cold handcuffs bit into her wrists. "And I'm the Queen of England. Been having a lot of break-ins lately. Young people like you thinking they can just walk into any neighborhood they want." "Check her bag," Miller ordered. Another officer dumped the contents of Jasmine's backpack onto the wet ground. Her calculus textbook fell open, pages instantly soaking up water. Her student ID from the university's advanced placement program scattered across the pavement along with her phone. Well. Reed picked up her phone, its case decorated with physics equations. "Pretty nice phone for someone just playing basketball. Where'd you get this, huh?" Jasmine felt anger rising through her fear. "My mother gave it to me. Dr. Alexandra Taylor, she founded Nexus Biotech. Please, just call her." Parker's laughter cut through the rain. "Right, and my daddy's Bill Gates. You really expect us to believe?" That's when they heard it. A sound like rolling thunder, growing louder by the second. The black Sikorsky S-76 helicopter emerged from the storm clouds, its spotlights cutting through the rain like laser beams. The aircraft handled the turbulent weather with impossible precision, descending toward the basketball court with deliberate grace. On its tail, the distinctive double helix logo of Nexus Biotech gleamed. The woman who stepped out wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than the officers' annual salaries combined. Dr. Alexandra Taylor, founder of Nexus Biotech, pioneer of revolutionary cancer treatments, and mother to the teenager they had just handcuffed, stood framed in the helicopter's lights, her presence electric. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement as she approached, each step measured and purposeful. Rain plastered her dark hair to her face, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes, the same deep brown as Jasmine's, blazed with a fury that made the officers take involuntary steps backward. "Get your hands off my daughter!" Dr. Taylor's voice cut through the downpour. "Now!" None of the officers moved. They stood frozen, weapons still drawn, trying to process how their routine harassment had turned into this situation. Officer Miller's hand trembled slightly on his gun. "I said," Dr. Taylor took another step forward, "take those handcuffs off my daughter, or the next call you receive won't be about a suspicious person in the park. It will be from your chief, explaining why you're all looking for new jobs." Parker found his voice first. "Ma'am, we're just following protocol." "Protocol?" Dr. Taylor's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Is it protocol to draw weapons on an unarmed child? To handcuff a teenager for playing basketball? To ignore her when she tells you she lives here?" She pulled out her phone. "I wonder what the media would think about your protocols, especially since my daughter's phone has been recording this entire incident." The color drained from Reed's face as he looked down at the phone he dismissed earlier. Its screen glowed with an active recording icon. Officer Miller lowered his weapon first, but his face hardened with defiance. "Dr. Taylor, if that's really who you are, you have to understand. There have been several break-ins in this area. 8, to be exact." Dr. Taylor cut him off. "All solved, thanks to my company's security systems. The perpetrators were all white college students from Riverside University." She stepped closer, her voice dropping dangerously low. "Funny how none of them ended up in handcuffs." The rain continued to pour, but nobody moved. Jasmine remained on her knees, water pooling around her, while her mother stood between her and the officers like an avenging angel in Armani. "Your body cameras are still running," Dr. Taylor continued, "so let me make something very clear for the record. My name is Dr. Alexandra Taylor. I'm the founder and CEO of Nexus Biotech. My daughter Jasmine lives with me at 1257 Highland Drive, that mansion right there." She pointed to the house overlooking the park. "She's 14 years old and currently enrolled in the quantum physics program at State University, and you just held her at gunpoint for playing basketball." Lightning flashed, illuminating the scene in stark white. Officer Parker finally moved to unlock Jasmine's handcuffs, his hands shaking slightly. "We were responding to a call," Reed started to explain. "From Karen Mitchell at 1242 Highland." Dr. Taylor finished for him. "Yes, I know. The same Karen Mitchell who called the police last month when our landscaper was trimming our hedges. The same woman who's filed 17 suspicious person reports in the past year, all targeting people of color." Jasmine rubbed her wrists as she stood up, her wet clothes clinging to her body. Dr. Taylor immediately wrapped a protective arm around her daughter. "Mom," Jasmine whispered, "how did you know?" "Your emergency alert," Dr. Taylor answered, keeping her eyes on the officers. "The one we programmed into your phone after the last time something like this happened." The words hung in the air like smoke. The last time. Because this wasn't an isolated incident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was Tuesday afternoon in America. "Dr. Taylor," Officer Miller tried again, adopting a more conciliatory tone. "We apologize for any misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Dr. Taylor's voice cracked like a whip. "Let's be very clear about what happened here. You received a call about a black teenager playing basketball, and your immediate response was to send 3 patrol cars and 6 officers with drawn weapons. You ignored her attempts to explain herself. You mocked her. You violated her civil rights. And you did it all without a single thought about the trauma you were inflicting." She pulled out her phone again, tapping the screen a few times. "I've just sent this entire incident, including footage from your body cameras, which my company designed, to 3 places: my lawyers, the police chief, and every major news outlet in the country." The officers exchanged nervous glances. Reed holstered his weapon, finally seeming to realize how bad this looked. "But that's just the beginning," Dr. Taylor continued. "You see, I've been collecting data. Every incident, every misunderstanding, every time someone like my daughter has been treated like a criminal for existing in their own neighborhood. And tomorrow morning, Nexus Biotech is announcing a new initiative, a nationwide database tracking police interactions with minorities, powered by our AI and accessible to the public." Parker's face went pale. "You can't do that." "I can, and I am. Because while you've been profiling teenagers in parks, I've been building one of the largest tech companies in the world, a company that, ironically, provides half of your department's equipment." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I wonder how the chief will feel about that contract now." Thunder rolled overhead as if emphasizing her words. In the distance, more sirens approached, but these weren't police cars. 3 news vans appeared at the park entrance, their satellite dishes extending skyward. The news van's bright lights joined the helicopter's beams, turning the rainy night into an impromptu stage. Reporters rushed forward with cameras and microphones, but Dr. Taylor raised her hand to stop them at a respectful distance. "No comments yet," she announced firmly. "First, I need to ensure my daughter's safety and rights are protected." She turned back to the officers, whose bravado had evaporated under the media spotlight. "Speaking of which, I believe you still have her phone and belongings scattered on the ground." Officer Reed scrambled to gather Jasmine's wet textbooks and phone, his earlier smugness replaced by obvious fear. As he handed them over, Dr. Taylor noticed his hands trembling. "Your chief just arrived," she informed them, nodding toward a black SUV pulling into the park. Chief Diana Roberts stepped out, her expression thunderous. Unlike her officers, she knew exactly who Alexandra Taylor was and what this incident could mean for the department. "Dr. Taylor," Chief Roberts called out, striding toward them, "I just saw the footage. I want to personally assure you—" "Save it, Diana," Dr. Taylor interrupted. "I remember our conversation last year after your officer stopped my head of research for suspicious behavior while he was jogging. You promised changes then, new training programs, better oversight. And yet here we are, watching your officers terrorize a child." The chief's face tightened. "These officers will be placed on immediate administrative leave pending." "Pending what?" Jasmine spoke up, her voice stronger now. "Another investigation that goes nowhere? More sensitivity training that doesn't change anything?" She stepped forward, matching her mother's confident stance. "I'm 14, and this is the third time I've had police officers treat me like a criminal in my own neighborhood." The gathering crowd of reporters leaned in, cameras rolling. Officer Miller looked like he wanted to sink into the wet pavement. "You know what the worst part is?" Jasmine continued, addressing the officers directly. "I used to want to be a police officer. I thought I could help change things from the inside. But now," she gestured to her soaked clothes, her scattered belongings, "now I realize the system doesn't need change from the inside. It needs to be rebuilt from the ground up." Dr. Taylor squeezed her daughter's shoulder proudly before turning back to Chief Roberts. "Tomorrow morning, I'm announcing a $50 million initiative to combat systemic racism in law enforcement. Part of that will be our new accountability database." "The other part?" She paused, letting the tension build. "We're establishing a civilian oversight board with real power, including the authority to revoke police contracts with tech companies like mine." The chief's professional mask slipped slightly. "You can't possibly." "Oh, but I can. Your department's entire communications infrastructure runs on Nexus systems. Your body cameras, Nexus technology, your dispatch software, Nexus. And all of those contracts are up for review next month." Lightning flashed again, highlighting the growing crowd of spectators who had gathered despite the rain. Among them, Karen Mitchell from 1242 Highland stood open-mouthed, her phone still in her hand from making the original call. "Mrs. Mitchell," Dr. Taylor called out, making the woman jump. "I see you there. Don't worry, you'll be hearing from my lawyers too. False police reports are a serious matter, especially when they show a clear pattern of racial bias." Dr. Taylor faced the assembled news cameras, her arms still protectively around Jasmine. The rain had finally begun to ease, but the tension in the air remained electric. "I could stand here and tell you this is an isolated incident," she began, her voice carrying across the park. "I could accept the chief's apologies and the mayor's inevitable promises of reform, but we've heard it all before, haven't we, Jasmine?" Her daughter nodded, standing taller now. "Every time it happens, they say it's just a misunderstanding, just a few bad apples, just protocol." Jasmine looked directly into the nearest camera. "But I'm 14 years old, and I've already learned to be afraid in my own neighborhood. How is that protocol?" The crowd had grown larger, with residents from nearby houses gathering to watch. Among them were other families of color, nodding in silent understanding. Even some of Officer Miller's earlier bravado seemed to crack as he watched parents pulling their children closer. "Starting tomorrow," Dr. Taylor announced, "Nexus Biotech isn't just going to talk about change, we're going to enforce it. Our new civilian oversight program will be led by community members, civil rights attorneys, and reformed police officers who understand the need for transformation. We're not just collecting data, we're using it to reshape the entire system." Chief Roberts stepped forward. "Dr. Taylor, while we appreciate your concern, police policy decisions need to come from where?" Dr. Taylor's eyes flashed. "From the same institutions that have failed our communities for generations? No. Change comes from accountability. Real accountability." She pulled out her phone again. "Right now, our AI is analyzing every incident report, every body camera recording, every dispatch call from the past 5 years. Patterns of bias aren't just statistics anymore. They're evidence." The chief's face paled as she realized the implications. Behind her, Officers Miller, Reed, and Parker shifted uncomfortably. "But this isn't just about punishment," Jasmine spoke up again. "It's about prevention. Mom, tell them about the training program." Dr. Taylor smiled at her daughter's initiative. Nexus isn't just providing oversight, we're funding a complete overhaul of police training, virtual reality simulations that teach de-escalation, implicit bias recognition using advanced neural mapping, community immersion programs that require officers to really know the neighborhoods they serve. She turned to face the officers directly. Because here's what you missed today while you were drawing weapons on my daughter. She tutors younger kids in math every Monday. She's developing a quantum computing program that could revolutionize cancer treatment. She volunteers at the homeless shelter on weekends. But you didn't see any of that, did you? You just saw a threat. Karen Mitchell tried to slip away through the crowd, but Dr. Taylor wasn't finished. And to the people who make these calls, who see danger in every face that doesn't look like yours, you're part of the problem too. But now there will be consequences. The news reporters surged forward with questions, but Dr. Taylor raised her hand again. No interviews tonight. Instead, I want everyone watching to ask themselves, what kind of world are we creating for our children? When a teenage girl can't play basketball without fearing for her life, that's not just a policy failure, it's a moral one. She looked at Jasmine, then back at the cameras. Tomorrow, we start fixing this, not with empty promises or symbolic gestures, but with real, measurable change. And to every parent watching who's ever had to have the talk with their child about police interactions, I hear you, I see you, and I'm putting $50 million behind making sure our kids grow up in a different world. The helicopter's blades began spinning up again as Dr. Taylor and Jasmine turned to leave. But Jasmine paused, facing the officers one last time. I used to want to be like you, she said quietly. Now, I'm going to be something better. Someone who actually protects and serves everyone equally. As mother and daughter lifted off into the clearing sky, the crowd below erupted in applause. Chief Roberts was already on her phone, likely calling the mayor. The officers stood in stunned silence, their badges catching the last light of day. The next morning, #Justice for Jasmine was trending nationwide. But more importantly, real change was coming, backed by billions in technology, powered by data, and driven by a mother's determination to protect not just her daughter, but every child who ever dared to dream of playing basketball in the rain. Subscribe if you believe every child deserves to feel safe in their own neighborhood. Tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed or experienced similar treatment? How can we work together to create real change in our communities? Remember, change starts with awareness, but it doesn't end there. Be part of the solution.